Hello and welcome to my birthday deck profile, which you, or should I say the majority of you, chose to be DDD. Now I know the second option after that was, the second place was Ancient Gears, so for all of you who have voted Ancient Gears, don't you worry, I'm going to bring that deck next week, so, we're going to enjoy DDD for this week specifically. Now, before we jump right into the deck itself, there are two things I want to say. First off, the usual subscribe thing if you want to help the channel, if you want to see more videos like this. It's I'm really appreciating that, and specifically, if you want to follow me on social media and stuff like that, links will be in the description as well. But I want to talk about a second about DDD. DDD is a very complex combo deck. It's not really that easy to learn, and a lot of people in their deck profiles trying to focus only on the usual three-card combo and make those work. And while it is a very, very good thing and trying to make those combos better, I'm trying on this deck profile to show you how to, make some of your, running over engines that's essentially making your worst hands a little bit more playable and kind of trying to keep as much as possible three-card combos. So hope you will understand that as we'll get into thought process of how I did that. But without further ado, and without wasting any more time, let's jump right into the birthday deck. DDD. Alright, so for the DDD list itself, I did put some expensive cards here in the extra deck and the main deck that you might want specifically to look for the budget option that I'm kind of making it work with a budget for the best as possible at the end of the video if you don't want to use those cards. And there's also, the structure decks, the Pendulum Dominations exclusives, which in the 4-year structure deck could be a little bit of expensive, but I think for the most part, DDD as a core is not something super ridiculous in price, and I think it's mostly affordable. But now let's get started with the deck itself. So starting things off, obviously we're running triple Ragnarok, triple Copernicus, triple Kepler, and the one Armageddon for our Pendulum lineup. This is the only Pendulum lineup you need. You don't really need more. Apocalypse, you don't really need more than one. Some people maybe would argue with me, but I will show you why you don't need more than one specifically, because I don't run a certain card that could conflict with it. But the point is, these guys are great. Apocalypse is mostly important for the Gilgamesh combo. You just put this in the scale with one Ragnaros, which I'm going to mention once again. One of the biggest mistakes that a lot of people do is that you don't want to have any card in the Pendulum scale when you summon Gilgamesh. The moment that you summon Gilgamesh, you cannot put two cards in the Pendulum scale, okay? So if you do have your Pendulum scales empty, you're fine. If you do have Pendulum scales, any card in them, you cannot. Because Gilgamesh specifically stays in his stacks. If this card is special summon, you can put two Pendulum DD monsters in your scale. It doesn't give you a choice up to two. It says two. That means you can only put two cards. And the two cards that you want to put on the scale, obviously, are this and this. But mostly, Armageddon is mostly fine sometimes, even if you draw with it. Sometimes even if you draw it, it's sometimes just a less good extender, but it's still an extender. Then for Kepler, best normal summon in the deck, search your contracts. It's a level 1, it's really great. Copernicus is the other good starter. It's not as good as this one, but it's still very, very nice overall. It's making sometimes your hand a little bit more playable. Sometimes Kepler doesn't make your hands playable, but this does. So that is really, really good to have. And lastly, we have Ragnarok, which is honestly, in my opinion, I'm not saying he's a bad card, but he's definitely the worst overall beside this from the three-offs. Because of the fact that you only use the effect in the scale, and honestly your free card combos really don't like to have this card, but I do have an engine that essentially made him better, because normally, I'm going to stop on this for a second. A lot of people really, really like to focus on the Kepler combos with Zero Slime, Necro Slime, and Lamia, and specifically just just those are the combos, those are everything that DDD do, but honestly, there's some hands that you specifically open up with this, and nothing really much useful beside this, and let's say a Lamia or something. And I'm trying to make, I'm not saying those because I think those are obviously almost impossible, but I'm just saying that I'm trying to make hands that use this or less of the useful cards
a little bit more playable, and you're going to see what I mean when we'll move on. But the point is, this is your pendulum lineup. This is what you need. This is like a little bit debatable if you want to run this at 3 or 2, because I do not run one particular card that can banish this. I think you already know what I'm talking about, but honestly, it's up to you if you want 3 Ragnarok or 2. I like 3 because I think Ragnarok at 3 is just really good. It's still an extender for your hands. And then for your non-pendulums, you're running 3 Lamia, 3 Slime, and 3 other Slime, and then the 1 Ghost. Obviously, this is like a solid lineup, and for everybody who specifically told me to run 1 Ghost, don't worry, I'm running the 1 Ghost now. There is one particular level 2 tuner that you can run instead, which also work with Haki Fibrax, so don't really worry about it. And secondly, Ghost is not really that important anymore. Like, it is important for some certain plays, but it's not, like, super important. It's mostly, like, sometimes it's, like, your backup tuner, I guess. It's mostly just because of that, like, you need sometimes, like, a 4th name of a tuner beside your searching spells, because, you know, sometimes you don't open up with it. Necro Slime is Fusion in the Graveyard. Surl Slime, for anybody who don't know, is the most important DDD card, like, 100%. If you don't open up with just Surl Slime, a lot of your hands are really, really bad. So I need you to understand that, like, there is ways to play without him, but he just makes hands so much better. So Surl Slime is just an absolute beast in this deck. So you need to run, like, you know, try to get to him as much as possible. Sometimes you're not able to, but you're still able to make plays, which that's what we're trying to do with another engine that you're going to see in a second. But for the point is, Surl Slime is the most important card in your entire DDD lineup, more than anyone. And then lastly, we have the 3 Lamia, which is your main tuner. She can summon herself from the graveyard, and that's pretty much what she does. She's just a level 1 tuner that just like special summon herself once, which is pretty cool. And then for the rest of the cards that you do run, we're running triple copies of Gamma and the 1 copy of Driver to serve as your level 2 tuners if you need to with Haki Fibrax or just the hand traps. And then 2 Phantom Knights. Yes, I do run the Phantom Knights engine. And I want to stop about this for a second again to explain why. Why do I run the Phantom Knight engine? Well, first and foremost, it's really, really easy to bring Birdish in this deck. And secondly, it's make your hands that, like, for example, you don't open up with a Lamia, but still with 2 fusions playable, or hands that you open up with the Lamia and 1 fusion capability still playable. And, like, the third one is, like, a Ragnarok or something. Like, it's making hands with Ragnarok a little bit more playable, or some of your boards even more powerful. This is really, really good. Now, I'm going to say this. If you do open up with this, it's definitely worse. Like, this is, like, the combination of the Phantom Knights that you don't want to open up with is this, mostly, or both of these, or one of these and 2 traps. Like, if you open up with those, it's kind of sucks, but, like, for the most part, if you open up with this one, you're still good. You still can play, so that's fine. This is, like, the worst one to open up with between those 2 if you just draw into it, but even if you draw into one of these, you can still salvage that, which is really, really nice. So, like, the Phantom Knights just really, really helps. It just push the deck in the directions it needs, in my opinion. If you don't want to run these guys, they're a little bit expensive. Like I said, there will be a budget option, but I really, really like these guys. I think they really, really help. And there is other options. If you don't like them, you can run more hand traps or desires or stuff like that. That if you want to, because I specifically don't run desires, which saying that as we're running into the spells, because of the fact that I'm running multiple engine cards. Because of that, I don't run the desires. But now we'll move on into the spells completely. We'd start off with 3 Dark Contract and 1 Swamp King. This is pretty much a standard lineup. This is your Searcher. Gamma will really work with this, which I actually stopped talking about Gamma for a second, which I do want to bring that up. Gamma is really, really good to just help you, like, you know, just either help you kind of have an interruption in your hand during your opponent's turn, which is really good, or just specifically, like, if your opponent trying to stop you with your continuous spell, or, like, you know, your spells generally, you could just, like, drop this, get a tuner, and get a, you know, vanilla or whatever, and just, like, make a Haki Fibrax out of it or something, and just, like, you know, just win the game from there. Because if they do negate you and you're able to get 2 additional combo pieces, it just really, really stupid. So I really, really like that. But yeah, this is really, really good, and this does come up a little bit more. I still don't 100% love this card, but I still think it's just really, really good for the most part to have just a one-off. Then for the other spells, we're running triple copies of Allure Darkness, double copies of Wear Our Thou, 1 copy of Monster Reborn, and 1 copy of 141. You don't really need Foolish Burial anymore. Foolish Burial don't really do a whole lot. Like, you could cut one War of Thou to run the Foolish Burial, and one thing that I said, you could cut one of these to run an additional, like, an Absurd Goblin or something, but I felt like this is just a solid lineup for most of the time. You only need those. Like, this is just against Nibiru, or, like, if you need an extender, 1-for-1 is pretty self-explanatory, where our Thou is just a searcher for your level 1s, which you have kind of nice a chunk of them, and Lower Darkness is just draw deeper into your deck while not also provoking an Ash, because a lot of people don't really drop an Ash on Pawn Discard. If they drop an Ash on this, you know that you bait them and you can play, because most of the time when you play this card is that you play this if you just need one additional extend or something, but sometimes like you just even use this to bait your opponent if they're willing to take the bait for some reason. I don't know. It's okay to have this. I think like if you want to run Desires is fine, like if you want to cut some of the cards and run Desires, but the problem with Desires is the fact that like because we run also trying to focus on the Gilgamesh and the Phantom Knight, like, you know, sometimes you're only able to bring 1, sometimes you're able to bring 2, and if you want to make the best board possible, Desires cannot be the part of the deck because it's going to banish sometimes both of the combo pieces for those, so, you know, Desires is unfortunately not capable to play in the deck. But if you specifically want to play Desires, that's totally up to you. And then for the traps, we're running 3. Phantom Knight, Offshade Brigadine, Fog, and Double Fogblade. This is really self-explanatory. You mostly want to search these, but sometimes if you open up with one of these or one of your Phantom Knights, you have the ability to search the other. It's mostly how that works, and sometimes you do want to search this one, because sometimes you do miss the one extender, so this is giving you the one additional extender that you need to order to play the deck, which is pretty good. But that's pretty much does it for the main deck. Honestly, DDDs are really simple, and I did them for so long, so many times, so I just decided to, like, you know, skip through them and just explain the things that are necessary, so now we can just move on into the extra deck and just have this video not being super long. But now for the extra deck, we're going to start off with the fusions. We're going to start with 2 Genghis and 1 big Genghis. I don't know why I'm just confusing those. Point is, 2 small Genghis, it's just really good to have, because sometimes you're not able to go into the second one of this, and, like, you know, having the second one can still use as an extender, not to, like, make the Synchro level, the Exceeds level 6, because we don't make that one anymore, but you're still able to do some really nice things with this one. And this one is obviously obvious. They're kind of like having the same effect, only this one can also work on normal summon, which making it better. Which that's kind of like the biggest problem I have with this one, is because it doesn't work on normal summon rather than this one. But that's still quite fine. Then for your synchros, we're running 1 copy of Formula Synchron, 1 copy of Herald of the Arclight, 1 copy of Alexander, 1 copy of Siegfried, 1 copy of Crystal Wing, 1 copy of Savage, and 1 copy of Satellite Warrior. These are, in my opinion, the extra deck that you need. Obviously, some of these are, like, you know, 6 of these are self-explanatory. Herald of the Arclight is the only one that I think, like, people are going to question. And I'm going to explain why. Is because sometimes your hand's only allowing you to, like, you know, go, what it called? Bardiche. And then you just, like, end up with, like, a tuner and, like, maybe the, what are called Silent Boots, and not able to do anything. And this, like, allowing you to, like, turn a level 3 and a level 1 into a synchro, and sometimes even play around hand traps and stuff like that. So that's really good, because Nibiru is the weakness of the deck. You're not able to summon this before Nibiru, I guess, if, like, they're trying to immediately, like, put you on 5, but most of the time people don't really play this immediately on 5, so this could be a nice play around that is unexpected to your opponent when they're going to activate a Nibiru or something. If they're like, you know, you summon this and they just want to activate a Nibiru to get this off the board. I guess sometimes people do that. But anyway, point is, this and this is Haki Firebrax, one of these guys. This ones are your base negations one, this is your extender, and this one, like I said, is just a backup negation, depending on your end board, pretty much, which you're going to see in one of the combos. And then for the links, Cross Sheep, Barricade Blocker, Haki Firebrax, Gilgamesh, and Rusty. This is your extra deck. I don't run any XCs. Unfortunately, I don't really have a spot for XCs. But if you do want to run 1 XCs, you're more than welcome to. Point is that Cross Sheep this and this, like these three, except from like from those two, they're really self-explanatory. Gilgamesh is just like helping you in some particular combos. You're not always going to go into him because sometimes you do draw or you have to put something in the scale, and then he's kind of useless. So that's why this is kind of like some of your backup plans. And Haki Firex is really, really good. And then you have Cross Sheep, which is just really, really nice as well. Now the Barricade Blocker, I chose it because it's just a generic Link 2 that you can use to turn any two monsters into a dark one, and then you can just have one additional dark monster and just turn it into a Bardiche, which is like the biggest thing here, because you don't really want a Linkaribo or something else. Like you want a monster that is unconditionally easy to summon. So Barricade Blocker is basically the best one, and also you have a nice effect that you could recover your dark contracts, so that also comes off nicely. But that's pretty much does it for the extra deck and does it for the deck profile itself. Hope you enjoyed that one. I know I was a little bit faster than usual, but honestly, DDDs don't really need any introduction if you're, play them for a while, or you're just like a veteran of the channel, because DDDs is something that I'm just doing for so long, like for, I believe, almost 4 years, and it's one of the most beloved archetypes on my channel. Just because people think I'm doing a really, really good job, even though sometimes I feel I don't. But anyway, point is, I think DDDs really, really works well with the Phantom Knights engine, which you're going to see in some of the combos that are coming right up. And I'm going to also show you a budget option after all of the combos when we'll be done with it. So let's jump right into combo number 1. Alright, so let's start off with the combo section. And for the combo section itself, I'm going to say this before we jump right into it. Yes, it's still ADO Pro. I'm going to make the transition to Yu-Gi-Oh! Omega. I need to take a little bit of time to getting used to how replays work there. And, things that are just moving a little bit differently. So it's going to take me a little bit of time to get used to, but for now we still have the combos going on ADO Pro. And let's get started with them. So for the combo number 1, we're going to see normally, the usual standard one, which is Sorrow Slime, Necro Slime, and Kepler to start off our hand. The usual standard one. But unlike normal DDD combos, we're going to end up on 5 interruptions rather than 3 or 4. And you're going to see why. So we're going to start things off with normal summon the Kepler, using Kepler effect to grab the gate. The gate is going to obviously grab to us the Lamia, and then the usual standard thing of fusion summoning, then banishing the Sorrow Slime, special summon the Lamia, triggering Genghis effect, special summon the Necro Slime, using the Lamia and the Necro Slime and the Genghis to make the Alexander, then use Genghis and Alexander and the Necro Slime to make out the Cross Sheep. Then you're going to use the Necro Slime effect to banish it and the small Genghis to make the big Genghis, triggering up Cross Sheep effect, giving you the Lamia, then triggering big Genghis effect because DD was summoned, and then you're going to get Guscade Alexander. Then we're actually going to do something that's a little bit different. Most of the time you're going to use I believe Kepler and Lamia, I think, in the standard combo. I'm not really 100% sure. I think it's Kepler or Lamia. Sometimes maybe you even don't care about getting the Genghis off the board. But you want to use 2 of these beside the Alexander to, go Haki Firex, the usual stuff. But here we're actually going to do something different. Instead, we're going to take the Genghis and the Cross Sheep and make out, instead, Barricade Blocker, and then take the Kepler, obviously, off the board and make up the Phantom Knight of Rusty Bardiche. Then we're going to use Rashti effect to send the Ancient Cloak and setting up our first interruption, which is the Phantom Knight of Fogblade. And then we're going to search with Ancient Cloak the Silent Boots, and then use Silent Boots to special summon itself because you do control a Phantom Knight, and then use itself and the Lamia, which is something that you don't really see a lot, and make with it the Haki Firex in this zone. Now, one important thing is, you do not want to clog some particular zones. You do not want to clog the link zones of Ancient Cloaks with anything that is not a link monster, just because you do need these specifically for the link monsters. Secondly, you don't want to set 2 of your Phantom Knight traps, unless of course you want specifically to summon Crystal Wing, because they're going to conflict with Savage, which then is going to be a problem for you once you summon the Gilgamesh, because then you'll not be able to put the Pendulum Zone. So I'm going to say that right now, just for people to not get confused with that. Then you're going to use Haki Firex effect, obviously. We're going to summon the Lamia. And then Alexander is going to summon the other Lamia out of the graveyard. Now, it doesn't really matter if this is supposed to be... Actually, it does matter that it's going to be a second Lamia, honestly.
But it's like, it could be a ghost, honestly. Like, you can summon a ghost, and then, like, because you're getting both of these off the field, you can summon another ghost. Like, ghost can send another Lamia to the graveyard to get resources, but honestly, there's really no point to doing that. So you're going to take the Alexander and the Lamia and make out a Savage Dragon. Then you're going to use Savage Dragon effect to put the Barricade blocker, and then you use the effect of, Silent Boots to grab to your hand the Ancient Cloak and still not set it. After, you're going to use the effect of Lamia to send the Dark Contract. Then you're going to set it to your side of the field. Then you're going to use your 2 Lamias, because you have 2 of them on your side of the field, and you're going to make the Abyss King Gilgamesh, and then you're going to put the 2 cards in your scales, which are going to be Ragnarok and Apocalypse. We're then going to use Apocalypse effect to banish your 2 big boys, which are the Big Genghis and the Alexander. And then you have just enough, the 1 Lamia in the graveyard, to be special summoned by the Ragnarok to your side of the field, and finally, make a Siegfried. And there you go. We got an end board of Siegfried, Savage, 2 interruptions, and then Yahaki Fireworks giving you the 5th interruption because of the fact that you can get the Formula Synchron and the Satellite as essentially as pops, and you do have basically 2 pops with him because you did banish the Alexander, and that's the only one that you have in the graveyard. Like, beside himself, I believe, like, I'm not really 100% sure how the Satellite pops works, but, like, the point is, you're going to have enough pops with this. Like, you have to have 2 pops because of these guys, then you also have Formula himself in the graveyard, and believe is also himself, and that, I believe, is 4 pops. Even if you're getting only 2 pops, that's most of the time enough. Like, if you're getting 2 pops, it's most of the time, like, popping 2 cards is enough. Sometimes even 1 is okay, so it's like, it mostly doesn't matter. You're going to get, like, the 1 or 2 pops, which is really what you need. And there you go. Like, 2 monsters interruptions, 1 Omni Negate, 1 Spell and Trap interruption, and then pop, which is pretty good. But that's pretty much does it for combo number 1, which is always the first combos are taking more than the other combos. Now let's move on into combo number 2. Alright, so for combo number 2, we're going to take things a little bit more differently because I want to show a combo that, like, it's a comeback combo, I guess. Like, a combo that, like, I showed, I think, in a previous video or, like, in the one previous to that. But I think it's important to show because it shows you the usual route of what happens if you do not open up specifically with a Dark Contract and, the Kepler. And instead of that, you open up with, instead, the Copernicus. Very, very important, actually, to note. And specifically, you have to open up with this in this particular hand, because if you do not open up with the Lamia, things are a little bit getting weirder. So you have specifically, for this hand specifically to work, you have to open up with this specific hand, just to let you understand, which is Sir Slime, Lamia, and Copernicus. Let's see where we get with this. So starting things off, you're going to start the usual things as usual. Sir Slime is going to take the Copernicus, and then you're going to make the Genghis, right? And you're not going to use your normal summon, which is really important, because this DDD monster, the small Genghis, cannot special summon if you do not special summon a DD monster. It can, like, unlike the big one, which can also work with normal summon, this can only work on special summon. So you're not going to normal summon this turn at all. You're going to send those 2 to the graveyard, use Star Slime effect, and you're going to summon the Lamia. Lamia will then help trigger the effect of small Genghis to summon the Copernicus back, which then is going to send up to your graveyard the Necro Slime. You're then going to use the small Genghis and the Lamia to make the Alexander. And then, unlike usual, you're going to have 1 less extender, so you're going to take these 2, and you're going to make with it the Cross Sheep. You're then going to use Necro Slime effect to banish it and the small Genghis to make up the big Genghis. And again, just like last time, you're going to summon the Alexander back from the graveyard. Then, you're going to do something different. You're going to take Cross Sheep and the Lamia and make immediately Haki Fibrax. And then Haki Fibrax is going to summon to you, to your side of the field, the second Lamia, which is then going to trigger up the Alexander effect to summon the first Lamia out of the graveyard. You're then going to take the Alexander and the Lamia and make out a Savage, which is pretty cool. And then you're going to take the Genghis, the big Genghis, and the first Lamia, or one of the Lamias that's still on the field, to make out a Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh is once again going to put 2 cards in your scales, and then you're going to use the Apocalypse effect to banish one of the Lamias, you don't really care, or you can even banish the Alexander itself, and essentially like 2 of them, and then you once again going to summon it out of the scale. and then you're going to use Ragnarok effect to summon the Lamia, and once again, you're going to end up on the Siegfried. And that's pretty much it for that. So what you get here is, once again, the Siegfried, plus the Savage, plus the interruption of the Haki Fibrex. It's not as good if you don't open up, like, the usual thing like I told you, but it is a little bit more achievable. Like, you can also achieve this hand by, like, open up Zero Slime, Necro Slime, and Lamia, and don't open up with the Kepler. It's pretty simple on that lineup, so just to let you understand how that works. This is like a standard hand of DDDs, which is really, really cool. But that's pretty much does it for combo number 2. Let's move on to combo number 3. Alright, so for combo number 3, we're going to have something a little bit different. For combo number 3, we're going to open up with Zero Slime, Ragnarok, and a Kepler. This is a little bit of a different one because, honestly, this is not really, like, most of the time, like, if you open up with a Ragnarok, you need a 4th card to even just, like, combo with it. And this will show you why specifically running Bardiche is really, really good in this deck. And it's a really, really simple and very, very fast one. So first things first, we're going to activate Ragnarok in the scale, we're going to normal summon the Kepler, Kepler is going to add the Contract, then we're going to activate Contract and add Lamia. We're then going to use these two to fusion summon into a Genghis, and then Ragnarok effect will give you the Lamia, and Genghis effect will give you back the Zero Slime. You're then going to use those two to make the Barricade Blocker, and then you're going to use these and the Barricade Blocker to make out the Bardiche. We're then going to use Bardiche effect to set a Fog Blade and set Ancient Cloak to the graveyard, and then grab a Silent Boots, special summon the Silent Boots, and using the Lamia to make out a Herald of the Arclight, and then use Silent Boots to get yourself the trap, and set the trap. Pretty much. Simple as that. Replay end. Nothing really much to say about that. It's a pretty simple one and pretty much needed to show combo because, like I said, sometimes you don't open up with the best of hands, and Ragnarok is not always the best in your hand, so this does show you what happened if you open up with that, and that's why Bardiche is here, because Bardiche is supposed to give you an additional extension and or just like, interruptions, rather than like, just like flailing around with a hand that you don't really know what to do with, which is really, really good, and that's why I really, really like Bardiche in the extra deck. But that's pretty much does it for the combos themselves, and now let's move on into the budget section. Alright, so before we end up the video, I'm going to talk about the budget option that I mentioned in the start of the profile, and this is what I came up with. I'm going to say this in advance, this is not going to be as good as running the list that I've shown you, or not running Haki Firex and stuff like that at all. So do understand it in advance that this is going to be worse by a little bit, but this is like the best thing that I came up with. So for the main deck itself, part of like the budget option of the main deck, you have 2 options represented from me to you that you can choose from them. And we're going to start off with what you need to take out. The things that you need to take out for the main deck specifically is the entire Phantom Knight engine. Because the Phantom Knights themselves, like the traps, are very, very expensive, so if you want to take them out, that's pretty much what you want to do. So you want to take these cards out, and for the option number 1, you want to put either more draw cards and generally good cards, which will be Pot of Desires, Dark Contract with a Witch, Upstart Goblins, things like that will be shown on screen what the options that you can have. However, there is a second option though. You could essentially decide to take all the Phantom Knight cards out and then one additional card, and instead of running like additional draw cards and stuff like that, running a package that is basically giving you a little bit more better with your normal summon and Copernicus, like with Copernicus and Kepler are really good, and that is a small Sacred Beast related engine. Now, the cards themselves are not Sacred Beast, but there are like work with the Sacred Beast cards specifically, but because they also work with Fiends, they work really well with DDD. And the cards I'm talking about are the following: 3 copies of Opening of the Spirit Gate, 2 copies of Dark Beckoning Beast, and then 1 copy of Chaos Summoning Beast. If you don't really know how that works, you should go check Thunder Dragon's deck profiles. They pretty much like explain how that works. But pretty much like the same length of thinking for that engine, and essentially in this deck, and essentially like giving yourself a little bit more normal summons and way to like extend into links and doing stuff. And this is pretty much what they do, which is really, really cool. So the mini Sacred Beast engine is another option. And then for the extra deck itself, well, for the extra deck itself, I tried to make this as cheap as possible while also kind of like maintaining that you want to try to use your hand as best of your abilities and try to lose less cards in your hand as possible and making most combination playable. So this is what I came up with. And it's, again, not as best as, the entire deck profile I show you, but let's see what we're taking out. So for the cards that we're taking out, we're taking Satellite, we're taking Formula, and we're taking Hockey Firebricks, because if you don't write Hockey Firebricks, you don't need the two others. Then we're taking Herald, Bardiche, and, the Barricade Blocker, because that's the other part of the engine. So if you, take the Phantom Knights, you want to take these out. So what are the 6 that I would recommend? Well, first one is, let's start off with the Synchros, and we're going to put one Synchro in here, and that is Meteor Burst, to essentially capitalize on the effect of Ragnarok, to essentially allow you to play a little bit better, because you do need as much special summons and stuff like that that you can get. So summoning a Ragnarok out of your scale, sometimes in middle combos, is really, really good, and Meteor Burst is not bad. For the Xyz, we're putting 2 Xyz in here, which are the number 38 or any rank 8 of your choice, and then the Wave King Caesar, the rank 6 for, DDDs, because he is essentially okay in some off-range hands for, the budget option. So he's a nice option for that. And then for the links are a little bit on the expensive stuff, but they're not super expensive because Appaloosa is still just $5 card right now, so you can get it really easily. So we're playing one Appaloosa, one Unicorn, which you get a reprint and it's pretty cheap. And the most expensive card here, which is Worf as a Phantom Knight Trap, only one of it, is IP Masquerena, because sometimes you need these cards, and I think they're going to work out nicely. But that's pretty much does it for the budget option. A little bit more than I wanted to, because I felt I need to explain that for people who want to play the deck, because DDDs is a deck that really changed a lot if you put a budget option compared to a lot of other decks. Because a lot of other decks, you just take a particular other card and, you run instead of, a cheaper hand trap or something like that. DDD, if you take Hockey Fireworks and stuff like that, it changed the entire deck fundamentally. Just to the core. So I thought those need a little bit of an explanation. But that's pretty much it for that. Hope you enjoyed. Remember to like and subscribe if you haven't already. As usual, remember, creativity is the key in this game. Have a good day, stay safe, and see you next week for the next deck profile, which will be Ancient Gears. Bye-bye.